There we go. Hey, so this is session we're at session 4 of the Teaching and Learning Conference. And this is the computer science room. And today at this session, we have Talon Hatch. He's presented for us many times. And he is Talon, he is the Regional Professional Development Director of Skillstruck, correct?
Yeah, we're one of our regional directors on that side. Yep.
One of the regional directors on that side. So I'm going to let you go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself and then just go right into it.
Yeah, awesome. I definitely will. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll get right into it. Yeah, I'm Talon Hatch. I'm based out of the Salt Lake City area. Really excited to be with you all. I'm a brand new dad again. I have a 3-week-old along with our little 2-year-old. That's two of my boys. And love being a dad. It's my favorite, most favorite thing in the world. My wife and I are not getting a ton of sleep right now. So if I look like I am a zombie a little bit, that's why with the newborn, but wouldn't have any other way. And really excited to be with you all today and talk some more about AI. I'm part of Skillstruck. We're a K-12 computer science partner. We're one of the approved curriculum providers for computer science within the state of Nevada. We've done a lot in that space, and as a natural extension of that, often we've started doing a lot over the last 6 months or so in the world of AI. So this whole session, we were asked to come and do this one again. We did it over for the CTE conference, the NACTE conference this summer in Tahoe. So if you attended that, it might be a little bit of repeat with some new stuff. But our whole focus today is talk a little bit about AI, some different ways of what it is, what it's not, how you can incorporate in your classroom, some things that we're doing on our end to help, but mostly on how to empower you as a teacher to get started. So would love participation as we ask questions, talk through things, put in the chat, and have a more interactive type time together. So appreciate you all being here on a Saturday. I know that's a sacrifice as well. To start us off, I thought I would share a couple of really terrible dad jokes. As a dad, I'm always practicing my dad joke ability. So I asked AI, since we're doing an AI session, to give me a couple of jokes or a good little icebreaker. So, why don't scientists trust atoms? Because, I went too fast. Sorry. Because they make everything up. Oh man, they make up everything. That's a terrible, terrible joke. And let's see if AI makes it even worse by giving us a less cheesy joke. And let's see if it gives us something that's worse. And why did the math book look sad? Because they had too many problems. So it went from a cheesy joke to even cheesier joke, and it keeps adding on the dad jokes to make it worse. Let's give it one more shot as we let a couple more people into the room. There's the other one. Since we got in the computer science, why do programmers prefer dark mode? Because light attracts bugs. Oh gosh, yeah. So just really awful jokes. We can see that AI is not filling in that regard, but we'll show in a lot of ways how AI can help us not just have terrible dad jokes, but also improve in the classroom. And I'd love, a lot of the session has been designed to be interactive and help a lot of people who are fairly new to AI and what that looks like. I'd love if you're willing on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being I'm an expert in AI and using it. Would you mind putting in the chat your level of comfort and experience in using different AI tools such as ChatGPT or Google Bard or any of those things? That way we can get a better idea of, our class here together of where everybody's at. And I'm seeing a wide range, and that is fantastic. A lot of this session will cater to that on the lower end, right, of some of the people we're working with, but want to work all through this together as a part of that. So I'd love to hear, and maybe if a couple are willing to put in the chat, maybe if 1 or 2 are willing to mute, what's been the general emotion around and response to AI in your schools, in your districts, with your students? What kind of things are you seeing, hearing? Go ahead and put that in the chat, or if one or two want to mute, I'd love to hear from you. Not good, cheating, computer teachers love it, other teachers hate it. No one has, none of my yellow kids know it just yet. Get a mixed bag of a lot of things. What other stuff? I'm loving it. I'm trying to get my students to try it. Varied but completely opposite spectrums. Totally right. A lot of negative thoughts, but also those who are trying to embrace it. I've seen a lot of things on students wanting to use it in all kinds of ways, right? And maybe some of our teachers being on the more varied spectrum of wanting to use it, not. A lot of hesitation at the district level, right? And we're going to get into some of those hesitations because and what some things we're trying to do to address that, but overall. So thanks everyone for the participation. That's really helpful. I know in a virtual setting, sometimes it can be hard to have that interaction. So I really appreciate that. And thank you. I don't know if it's pronounced Zenobia, but want to know about and find effective ways to implement. That's really important. And Anna wanting to use it. That's what we're going to talk about. Some really simple ways to get started with that and go through that. So really, really quick, AI is not a new thing. It's not a new thing to Hollywood. I mean, there's already a new movie that's coming out. I can't even remember what it's called. I saw some previews about AI taking over the world. It's been a part of our society and culture for a while, both for positive ways and negative ways, leading to a lot of misinformation and fear around AI. And just a quick timeline. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but something just really interesting of OpenAI, right? Who's connected to ChatGPT, who really was a big part of the catalyst to this emergence with AI. Started in 2015, and it's just been growing ever since, to where it's just been rapidly changing and evolving, where last spring you started to see ChatGPT 3.5 introduced and really hit the market hard and change the way that things are going, to where nowadays, I have people asking me, how do I stay up to date with AI and its rapid changing? And it's almost impossible, right? There's new updates, new tools, new companies, new things being formed every single day at every hour, just because of what AI's capability is and what it can do. Something that's important to understand as we dive into this, for some of those people who are asked, I want to understand it, is a tool like ChatGPT is what's considered a large language learning model. So it's just taken all the different data. So for example, internet estimated 100 trillion words. Okay. So I can't even fathom that number, 100 trillion words, right? So that's about 33,000 years worth of human civilization, right? And it's consumed all of that data and is able to consume and try to make sense and answer from that knowledge. It's not necessarily an actual intelligence, more as a really high complex math equation that's able to compute large amounts of data. It's not necessarily thinking for itself, it's just computing the large amounts of data that it's constantly consuming and adding to that larger equation. And so with that, just to give you an idea of its adoption cycle, and a lot of this is in effect because of the internet, but just to show you how quickly it was added into our society as a whole, how quickly it got to 1 million users. Had 1 million people on it within 5 days of its introduction to the public. And that's grown even further to millions and millions of users around the world. And it's not going away. And so something really important for us to think about is it's not going away, and it's evolving and growing. So this chart is important to consider here, where this part in blue shows you ChatGPT 3.5, one of those initial introductions of how it scored on some of these initial tests, right? You can see the SAT in math, AP World History, the BAR test, GRE, a lot of different things, how it went the first time around. And then one of the newer versions with GPT-4, how it scored in green with the latest updates. So you can see it's growing, it's evolving, it's getting a lot smarter to where a lot of these tests it wasn't even passing to now, it's getting a B and higher in a lot of its grades. So it's continuing to evolve, it's continuing to change, and it's not going away. And so trying to address what that looks like. And so what we want to do the remainder of this time is talk some different ways of the benefits and things you can do in your classroom to help you, things to be aware of the potential harm or challenges that come with AI, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but it's also not dark clouds all the way around either. We need to take a safe and a balanced approach to AI. And some of you've already shared some of the fears you've already been hearing around the classroom, the cheating, compromising the learning of students, how it affects teachers in the classroom. A lot of teachers have said to me, is it taking over my job? Am I not going to have a job anymore because of AI? Any other fears that you've been seeing or hearing from the districts or your schools or other teachers that you can throw in the chat, or if you want to unmute, feel free to do that too. Any other thoughts to add to that? Equalizer for different skill level. Awesome. That's a positive side of that, right? CS students using it to learn faster. Awesome. Thanks, Lloyd. Right? They can use it as a tutor. Great positive things on side of that. And something to think about with these fears is there is some valid concerns to some of these areas of, as we hop in here, of actually if we're not using it the right way, it could impede some of the learning, where there could become an over-reliance of tech. It could just get all their answers where sometimes they're not thinking through them for themselves. Something important to think, just like anything if you're doing a Google search, a lot of times there's misinformation. It's not a perfect system, right? It's not a perfect approach of it's always going to give you the exact answer. Sometimes it's incorrect. Sometimes it can just create your own essay where students are having to do that work. Yeah, like you said, on some of those different areas, and that accuracy on that percentage has been changing and evolving of what that looks like depending on what version you are. But yeah, its accuracy is level. And so trying to teach the ethics, the digital citizenship behind that is important as well in considering that. Some things that we've been seeing that I'll add is besides the jeopardizing of the experience, something really important to think about, and that we'll talk about some ways that we're addressing that, but that I really want everyone to understand is the data privacy component of AI is something really important to consider. So as you're using a tool like ChatGPT or Google Bard, if whatever information you're putting in to that large language model, the AI tool, that data is being fed into the larger model, and you don't have any control of where that data goes, how it's used, who controls that data, or what they do with it. So it's important to be really careful in the use of PII, a lot of those different things, so that you can actually protect yourself, protect your students as you start to use these tools, and really take some smart digital citizenship as you go about using these tools, because there are those ramifications that you need to consider as you walk through of what kind of data you input, because you won't necessarily control. And because of a lot of that, we've seen a lot of districts ban tools like ChatGPT completely, just because of that data breach is too high of a risk with student data privacy laws and PII. Often that's too big of a legal concern and too high of ramifications to allow it, which, as we've talked about, and some have already mentioned in the chat, that can lead to disadvantages to teachers. Being able to take advantage of these tools can disadvantage a lot of those students who maybe aren't receiving these opportunities at home, or don't have those same opportunities or access to different technology at home, and they get left further and further behind, and we don't prepare our students for the future. And so a lot of our approaches, the things we'll talk through today, and I'll skip through that part, is how do we approach that where we can actually equip students with tools to enhance quality of learning and development critical thinking skills, but also not have too much an excessive dependence on that tool. Love to hear any thoughts that people have with some of those questions of things you're already doing to help enhance the quality of learning in your classroom and actually help students think more critically as they use AI in the classroom. Has anyone been doing anything so far that's been successful as you're trying to address your own policy, your own approach to using AI in the class? Go ahead and unmute if you'd like, or throw anything into the chat. As you think about that, I want to go to an example to help us think through this a little bit more of past technology and how it's been addressed. This right here is a real article that I took out from an old newspaper about a certain technology that was released, and something that a teacher was talking about of how they didn't want this specific technology to be used. They said, I know that how my thought process worked as a child. If I could use a shortcut, I would save my homework and go home and do it on the blank. There is no sense in doing it laboriously. We've got this, make the use of this blank in elementary school a no-no. And some of you probably already guessed what this tool is, what we're talking about here, what this old newspaper article was referring to. And it's the calculator. This is a real screenshot from this article from the newspaper, how math teachers were protesting against the use of calculator. We've seen similar things in the approach as internet's come out, cell phones, all these types of things that have, instead of impeding learning, we've changed our approach to learning to actually help students go through. And that's the idea of our proposed path forward is, instead of an all or nothing approach with AI, which often a lot of districts and schools are taking that approach, that it can be all or nothing, is we want to recommend to you and show you some different ways to actually have a safe and a balanced approach to how AI is used in the classroom. Because it's not going away, and we want to empower our students. Just to give you an idea, there's been some recent use everyday use within industry, but even a whole other new job markets forming of, almost we got 335K job salary for an AI whisperer in a lot of these markets. So it's an evolving market where actually people who have these strong AI skills are sought after within industry. It's becoming, someone already mentioned within computer science, a big help for those developers use it further. And so as we're trying to help prepare, that safe balance approach is really important to do that. And a big part of that, and that prompt engineering is actually going to help you be able to use chat most effectively. And so what I want to do is, let me change this up here and give you access to this real quick. So we're going to go through a couple practices to help you as teachers do some prompt engineering, some ways to help you know how to use AI more effectively. And what we're going to do is I'm going to share with you all a tool to help you do that as a part of this practice today. So let me pull this up. I'm going to refresh. I logged myself out, so sorry about that. Bear with me real quick. So we're going to go through this all together. So in response of that safe and balanced approach in our world within computer science, within Skillstruck, we actually have introduced a new tool to actually help districts have a safe way to use ChatGPT in the classroom. So we've introduced a new program called Chat for Schools, where we've taken the actual API of ChatGPT have embedded in our platform so that you can have the full power of ChatGPT, but it locks all the student data so it's not being fed to the large language model, so you can keep your students' data safe, but also allow you as a teacher to actually be able to control when it's used, how it's used, see the chat history of your different students, and still empower your students in the classroom to use it. So what we're going to do is I want to open this up. If you want to go to, you can scan the QR code or just go to that link, the bit.ly link. If you just do the bit.ly, the chat for schools, that will take you to a link to create a demo. You create a demo and it'll allow you to get into the chat for schools, and I'll show you what that should look like once you get there. And then we're going to go through some prompt engineering activities to help you practice your own AI skills. You can go in, play around with the platform, but start learning some different ways where you can use this in the class itself. So go ahead, let me get that link and I'll put it in the chat as well for everybody. So you have that. Go ahead and go and create a little account in there. If you just do the bit.ly/chat for schools, that'll give you access to that for us to go through and do the prompt engineering activity. Feel free to throw anything in the chat if you have any questions or anything on that. And I'll go ahead and pull it up as well. So once you've gone to that link, you should create an account. It'll send a link to your email so you can go back to it later, but you should be seeing a screen like this here where it just shows this main educator portal within that. So once you create your account, it'll pull up here for us to go through this activity together where we're going to go down and you can just go into the student platforms here at the bottom. Once you're there, click into this, click on the teacher view, and that will open up for you here. Let me pull it up. I logged myself out. Let's go back. Within that, oh, if I got too many accounts open, I'll let you in 1 second. Go back here. Thanks for your patience on that. Let me know if anyone else is having any issues. Get into that. Be able to get into your own account. Let's see. Get it out. Let me log myself back in. Thank you for your patience as we get into that. Okay, sorry about that. I got a brand new computer this week and it's all my settings just got reset. So when you get there, you should be able to get into this chat for schools. If you have any questions, let me know, but you should be able to get into a screen that looks just like this once you get in your portal. And as you can see, it's got a really similar feel to, because it's taking that ChatGPT, but actually have the option to have your chat history. Feel free to explore some of the stuff in there. There's some professional development lessons and student lessons to actually learn what AI is. Feel free to explore any of that. What we're actually going to be doing today is this PD lesson over here about tips for writing prompts. And we're going to walk through that together, but we're actually just going to do a short and condensed version because one of the most effective ways for you to start recognizing ways you can use in the classroom, like some have mentioned already in the chat, is to become a better prompt writer. So just like you might have discovered when you're writing and trying to search for things in Google, the more you're better at asking questions to Google, the better results you get. And that's taken up a step even further when we're actually using tools with AI. And so that's what we're going to practice today, is actually then here. Feel free to play around with different things. There's the tutor button where you can go in there and use AI as a tutor, and you'll have access to this to continue to explore. So don't feel like you have to look through everything in the next hour. You'll have access to for at least 2 weeks, and I can extend it afterwards if you would like as well. But we're going to go ahead and get to the activity, get to your chat for schools, and I'm going to go through a couple of the prompt engineering. And essentially it comes down to a couple of these main points of how you can effectively use AI that will walk through of these 4 areas of be clear and specific, use structured and sequential prompts, provide examples and constraints, and ask further questions. And so as I go and share some of these different examples of what these mean, I invite you to actually go in and try it for yourself within the AI tool. So for example, let's start with being clear and specific. So I'll give you an example of a vague prompt. So you could ask the chat for schools, tell me about the history of art, and it will give you, a certain kind of response that's really generic. Instead of a more clear prompt, like discuss the major art movements from the 19th century to the present day and highlight their key characteristics and influential artists, right? Another example, tell me how to teach computer science. We're in a computer science session. A lot of you teach computer science versus discuss effective ways to teach the Nevada computer science standards in a manner that engages high school students and increases retention. So if you're trying to get some new ideas of how to create a more engaging classroom or teach a specific standard in an engaging way, the more specific and clear you are in your prompt, the better your answer will be. So I invite you to think about, to try doing this actually within the chat tool yourself right now. Let's try one of these things actually out in the chat for schools environment. So for example, like if I go into my chat, let me put it in here. I'm going to ask it, tell me about the history of art. Okay. So it's going to start going through this really long, generic answer, right? Where it's literally starting from the very beginning of prehistoric art and giving short little paragraphs all the way up to contemporary, right? And as you read through it and look and try it yourself, you'll see some of it's, pretty helpful and has some interesting points that'll highlight. But depending on what I'm trying to do and actually understand the history of art, that's going to be giving me a really generic answer versus, if I go in there and ask a more specific question like our clear prompt that we practiced earlier, I'm going to get a more specific answer of bulleted points about Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Cubism. It's going to really give me more detailed points that's actually going to be helpful for me to continue my research. So go ahead and try some things yourself, ask some different questions, think about some things you're trying to do, ask one question, and then do a follow-up question that's more specific as you go through that. Oh, and Tara Lynn, you're totally right. And I think that's something important that we're actually trying to do, and you'll see within some of our lessons within there is, her comment of, I feel like learning specific AI prompt language should be its own classes. Over time, I can imagine it becoming a part of maybe our computer science classes or added to different standards. As AI becomes more and more prominent, we're going to see more and need to use these skills. And so you're spot on with that as you go through that. So something to think through as you practice some of that. Yeah, and you just keep trying it until it gets right, and practice is important. And that goes a lot to our next tip of as you to try different things is using structured prompts. And what is really helpful with that, instead of just saying, help me plan a vacation to Venice, Italy, what a lovely place to try to go and visit, giving it a structured prompt of saying, please help me plan a vacation to Italy, but I need information on transportation, accommodation, and popular attractions. And within that question, I want you to address these specific points of transportation. I want you to address these specific points of accommodation. That way, again, we're telling the AI tool, not that I just want to help me plan a trip to Venice, but these are the specific things I need help planning with, and that will allow you to get the most out of the AI tool. So we'll try this one again. Let's do a new chat over here. So if I ask that question again, help me plan a vacation to Venice, Italy, go in there. It's going to give me some really generic points here. It's going to give me some good ideas of where to look for flights and decide on the best time to visit. But I didn't give any information of when I would like to visit or a specific thing that I would like to look at. And it's getting actually some pretty good results still of some various festivals throughout the year and things on budget. But as I go in there and let's see if I even add some of these points just on transportation, for example. Instead, try some of these things out within your own chat. Like, if I just even add the point of transportation, here goes some really specific points that I need to think about within transportation. And as you saw, even as I just asked the specific question about transportation, but I didn't ask some of those other parts of accommodation or popular attractions, it actually continued to try to follow that same structure it did with transportation for those other questions that I asked, even though I didn't give it specific questions. And I can go back and ask those specific questions, dive even deeper on that. So go ahead, play around with it, try some different things yourself, ask them some questions, and try some structured and sequential prompts within the chat tool. Try some things out as a part of that. And play around with it. And also, as you're going through that, add any things that you're learning or that you're seeing as you try for yourself, trying to use some of these different tools of what you're discovering as a part of that. I know a couple people joined us a little bit later. So let me go ahead, just so give everyone, as everyone's practicing. If you joined us a little bit later, go ahead and go to this link that I'm putting in the chat. This is access to our tool for schools within AI. It's a safe version of ChatGPT that locks down the data, and we'll show you a couple other things that it helps with. But we're practicing our prompt engineering, which is the first step in using AI effectively, is asking the right questions. And so we're going through some practices together to do that as a part of that. Awesome. A next key part as we're practicing AI is going through and providing examples and constraints. So for example, even if we look at our Venice question that we just did, is I have a limited budget, but I want to travel to this destination known for its affordability, to a destination known for its affordability. Can you suggest some budget-friendly options? Or another example, create a thank you letter. I need to thank my grandmother for the orange sweater she gave me last week. Make it 2 paragraphs long. So give specific examples to the prompt to help it really fine tune what you want it to do. Terilyn, where's the place for you? Don't feel dumb at all. So in here, once you get into your account, you'll just go scroll down to the chat for schools at the bottom, and you'll get right into this chat feature where you can add a new chat or just open right here and start asking any kind of questions that you want. And any of your questions will create a history of the different chats you've been doing. Just like if you use ChatGPT, same structure as you go through that as a part of that. And practice some of those things. No problem. Please ask any questions. Don't want anyone to feel stuck. That's what this is for. No silly questions or anything like that. So an example as well of prompts with constraints. So an idea of consider the time of year when I'm asking about my trip to Venice and tell me about optimal weather conditions, or I'm trying to plan a large dinner. Can you factor in any dietary restrictions on this specific person who has celiacs? Or I'm trying to plan this really interactive lesson plan for my students, but I have a few students in my class that have a learning disability or a physical disability. Can you take into account this student's specific need who is on the spectrum, or this student who is across any demographic or any reading level, all those types of things? You can add different constraints to help you get a more specific answer for what you're looking for as you're trying things out. Yeah, it does, Mario. So it creates a history so you can go back and read it again. That's a great question. So you see all the things here, all of it will be stayed with your profile so that you can go back. So as you can see, I want to go back to my thesis ideas I was working on for my Macbeth essay that I was working on a couple weeks ago. I can go back and revisit that, both as a student or as a teacher, as you're using that, both with my tutor tools or just the generic chat tools. Because something that's important to recognize is if you click into these tutor tools, they're catered to help specific subjects that you're working on, where the open chat feature is the open AI model where you can ask to do different questions and work through various things that you're working on. And it will save all that chat history for you as you're practicing it. Yeah. As you go through, as you participate and practice some of these different areas. So that's the idea of examples and constraints. So something to practice as you're trying different things within AI. And something you might have already noticed as you're trying different things within the tool and asking questions is you always have to ask further questions. So it's most likely not going to give you exactly what you want on the first go around, or maybe it does, but follow-up prompts are important to help it narrow it down and continue to drill down to actually what you're looking for within the tool. So for example, what are some benefits of regular exercise is my initial prompt. Then I do a follow-up prompt. Can you provide specific examples of how regular exercise can improve mental health for my students? Can you provide specific 15-minute aerobic exercises that can be done at home with no equipment, right? And so continue to ask these different questions and follow-up prompts to get even more specific answers and results from the tool. So asking questions and taking it like a conversation with an expert or a brainstorming tool that you're trying to get more out of. The more times you ask questions and get feedback, the better you're going to get to what you're looking to try to do. So asking those follow-up prompts as a part of that as well. So go ahead and try some of that within the tool with some of the questions that you're already asking. And try to ask some more follow-up prompts to those questions that you're working through. And please ask any questions in the chat that you may have, things that are coming up, questions that you're seeing. Happy to answer any of those as well as a part of that. Because the biggest thing with using any of these tools is the more you practice, the better you get. Right, just like anything, but the more you recognize, oh, this is how I could use this in a lot of different settings or scenarios. So to take advantage of those opportunities with that. Okay. And just a quick reminder, we Kathy, we go into 150 or right to the top of the hour.
There you go. It's 2:00.
Okay, perfect. So again, as we're practicing these better questions, instructions are going to get you better results on everything that you're using and trying to use. And something that's important to think as we're going through those and you're trying it out, getting more comfortable, just remember AI is just not going to be able to replace a lot of these awesome things that you already do as a teacher. A lot of these reasons of why you actually got into teaching in the first place is right, that human connection, that motivation that you only can provide to your students, that personalization, the creativity you have as a human, that empathy that you can have with your students. The hope is to help AI do a lot of those things, that those managerial type work, the things that are not ever the reasons why you got into AI in the first place. And so just remember that as we're practicing this. One thing I want to show you, I'm going to go back over into the platform. If you go back to the other tab that opened up when you first created your little demo account, a lot of our teachers, when they're first trying to recognize ways that AI can help them, and we're going to keep releasing additional supports and more tools for teachers to help them with that. But this activity generator, for example, if you go back to your main teacher portal, is a great place to start to try to dabble in, okay, this is how AI can actually help me in creating a lesson plan, for example. So if I pull up this lesson plan here, this is essentially just giving us a more structured approach to the chat tool that we've just been using, but giving us specific fields that we can fill out of information and inputs to help build this lesson plan. So for example, if you're just wanting something really structured and you're like, I want to figure this, I don't want to have to dabble so much in writing this all out in the chat. Here's an example of tools we're releasing to help with that. If you're saying, okay, I'm teaching 13-year-olds, I need a 30-minute activity. We're talking about computer science, and I want to combine it with let's say environmental science. I can't even spell. Let's see if it even goes through that on that. There's no fixing there. And I'm going to ask it to say Nevada K-12 CS standards. There's a specific standard I want it to recognize. And I can hit generate activity. And this will take a little bit longer, but it's going to start working through the inputs that I gave it to actually come in here and create a lesson plan or activity based upon what those inputs that I gave it. And this is a great way, especially for if you have different teachers at your site who are a little more hesitant to dive into that prompt engineering that we've been practicing today. This is a really simple way for first exposure with AI, is different tools like this where it already tells me exactly what I need to put into the tool, and it's going to create a really simple lesson plan that I can take and incorporate right into what I'm already doing, or adjust and change, or continue to work through and make edits as needed. But having a great place to start and not have to go through all that writing and working through all of the more laborious parts of writing a lesson plan, but taking that and actually incorporating right in the classroom. So yeah, exactly. And those are the types of things where you can actually start empowering yourself in the classroom to do that. And the cool part too is even some other things to think about and consider, like with those lesson plans, you get more comfortable with seeing that type of structure, is as you think of new ideas. And if you're using a tool that's safe on data, you can have ChatGPT divide up your class into groups, or come up with different questions as you go through that. There's so many different ways it can be used, where a cool part is I've even seen it. I don't know if you've seen it with its language use. You can see that with our tutor for like language learning. But if you're in a Spanish class or even have an ELL student, anything that you put in here in another language is actually going to respond back to you in that language. And it's one of the better language tools out there, whether you're putting in Spanish or Russian, Swahili. There's any language I've ever tried with it, it's really good at responding back and having those types of conversations with students, whether they're practicing, in a Spanish class, or they're a student who's an English language learner and needs some help. The sky's the limit a little bit in what you can do with AI as you practice those things. So continue to explore and try some of those things out. You can ask those questions of helping you divide up your class. There's so many different ways it can help you as you go through that. Feel free to ask any questions or add additional thoughts within the chat as well. Would love any additional questions or things as you practice. As we go back, let me go back to the teacher portal if you want to go to your other tab as well. Something that just as you're exploring of some things that we're offering within SkillStruct as well, and this chat settings, something to consider is actually the ability to be able to turn the tool on and off. So say you're in a class of your English class and you want them to spend the first 10 minutes in actually working through an outline for their essay or their thesis and using the tool as a part of that. And then at the remainder of the class, you actually want to turn it off. You can disable the tool so they can actually then have to go and write it. They can't use the AI tool anymore. And you can see their chat history. You can see all those different things. So you can control when it's used and how it's used so that you determine its impact in your classroom and how it's used, as well as stopping students from searching specific items, right? All these AI tools are actually pretty good at responding if they're trying to ask certain terms, and it will actually answer back and say, I can't help you with that. Help recognize actual trends and things like self-harm or bullying. And that's one of the cool things is that we can see over time with AI is actually start using AI to look for trends in how students are asking questions, using it for grading. There's lots of cool things in the future to actually use AI to recognize when students are asking questions of self-harm and helping us mitigate sooner to help prevent tragedies. Also help recognize trends in grading. Like there's so many cool things that are continuing to evolve with AI that we're only at the beginning of. And I encourage you to hop in, explore, play around with any of this. You have access to it as you dive through and try to make AI a bigger part of your classroom going forward as a part of that. Yeah, I love that, Carol. Thanks for adding that. It's a great prompt to ask AI to be something. Is actually ask, you are this, and I need you to do this, or you are my student, and I'm trying to prepare for this. How would you create a lesson plan or an activity or teach this subject to this specific student? And the cool part is even, as we within those sections that you set up here as a teacher, or you can manage it, or it can go through Clever or those different things, is actually have the tool respond to that student in a reading level that is at their level. So you can actually have, if they're, say they're an 8th grade student, but they're actually on a 5th grade reading level, actually have the tool interact with them on that 5th grade reading level to help address that student to where they're at, or adjust the tool to different IEPs and really go to that next level of differentiation to meet some students where they're at and have essentially an extra tutor, an extra teaching assistant in the class to help you as a teacher meet more students to their needs and what they're trying to do. So a couple last things before, and we can just kind of leave anyone open for any questions as well. Let me go back to my slide here and I'll skip through some of this a little bit, and some things we're looking at of trying to create a little bit more helps there. Let me just skip through that. Again, our suggestion, if you choose to use a tool like Chat for Schools or find something similar, is it's probably a smart idea to have some of those, unless they're regulated, especially on the data side. It's important to protect your students' privacy, your district and school's privacy with a lot of these AI tools, to make sure that they're either blocked or managed in how they're used. Because the answer, our hope, is to not necessarily have to have no solution to no help, but also not allow boundless and unrestricted use either. That safe, balanced approach of using a tool like Chat for Schools, or having an approach as a district with the tools you are using to make sure that you're mitigating your risks and taking advantage of the opportunities that it provides by protecting your data, controlling its use, but making sure that it does become a part of your classroom, that your teachers are using it to impact their job, impact students, because this is not going away. It's going to have a generational impact on teachers, on students, on the workforce going forward. And the hope is to help everyone be a leader in this space, and not feel like you have to just worry about all of the negative publicity and things that often surround a lot of these different tools. Because in the end, right, curiosity-driven research just works better. Real breakthroughs come from people focused on what they're excited about. And so I want to invite you all today I'll share this slide deck out with whoever would like it, so you can have access to that. But go in, play around with it, practice your prompt engineering skills, explore that, and really take advantage of what AI, recognize those challenges and the constraints that come with it, but recognize those huge opportunities that it can to inspire creators, grow those problem solvers, and strengthen your communities, because that's the power that technology has on impacting kids and the future going forward. So for the last few minutes, Kathy, I think we can hang out and let people ask any questions or anything, if that's okay with you, or whether it's on AI in general or other things you're seeing. Love any questions.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then anybody who wants to stay in the room to ask questions. Talon is also presenting session 5 and 6, right?
I am, yeah.
He's here for the next 2 hours.
We're in for the long haul.
Yep. And so but for this session, you guys, I posted up in the chat, I put the name of the session and then the attendance link and the survey link. And then if you're going to stay here, stay in here, or if you want to go look out some of the other rooms, there's like 15 more rooms out there that you can go look for. But again, Talon will be here. Let me stop this recording. I said I was.